G'day. I was speaking to someone at a tempering of the sword event, which is ice bath and Wim Hof breathing and things like that. And I was talking about how I'd overcome chronic fatigue, and someone was saying their sister has chronic fatigue, and I thought I would explain my sort of experience with that and how I used Wim Hof breathing to overcome my circumstances. I don't know if it would work for everyone, but what I did that helped me get out of that. So my story was I was working, 60, 70 hours manual labor, um, running two cars, five employees, the gardening business, and just really under a lot of pressure in an abusive relationship, coming home from that work being told how lazy and shit I was and things like that. So I was under huge amounts of stress. And I remember working and wishing I would just collapse so I could just have a break. And funnily enough, that's, basically what ended up happening. I got a virus. Um, I don't think I had two kids at the time and the wife. I don't think they got sick, or maybe they got a little bit sick, but this thing just knocked me for six. I was saying to someone, I dropped the ex and the kids off at the airport, and I had to pull over halfway home. Not even halfway. I probably got a kilometre down the road, and I had to pull over because I just felt like I was going to burn through the seat. Um, just incredibly hot, and then I stopped being able to uh, deal with stress, I guess. Although I didn't realize that exactly that's what was going on at the time, but I just started sleeping a lot, 14, 18 hours a day. Um, and went to the doctor and got tested for everything, and they said my test results showed I had permanent kidney damage. I remember being in the doctor and them looking up the test results and hearing your doctor go, "Oh shit." It's not a good feeling. Um, Over time that came down, so it ended up being I didn't get permanent kidney damage, um, but obviously something had gone terribly wrong with my body. Um, and from that point on, I was sick for a year and a half, 2 years. I didn't work. I was lucky I had a good friend who kept up the business. The business was big at that point, and it sort of shrunk down to just enough that we were able to get by and that guy keep that guy employed. Um, and I would find, yeah, like the smallest sort of stress that would come in, like say I got an email from a real estate agent or something that was a bit something I didn't want to deal with or something like that, my brain would just shut down. And I suppose, so as far as my symptoms, I had, obviously I was very tired all the time and exhausted. I had pain at the back of my head, like sort of around the brain stem sort of area. I had really sore feet, which I guess was from inflammation, um, because the lymphatic system, relies on motion and stuff. And if you're inflamed, I think it all sort of accumulates down the bottom. It's not being pumped out if you got too much or whatever. I'm not you know, these are just things I remember picking up, but I'm not sure exactly. I'm not a scientist or a doctor. I'm just speaking from my personal experience and what I sort of remember researching at the time. Um, but the worst for me was I just couldn't think. And, that had been the one thing that I had going for me in life, was at least I was, I had a lot of other problems in life, but at least, I was an intelligent person, and I had always been able to have good conversations with people and communicate well and things like that. And I would be sitting, sometimes I'd go out to try and work with the guy who was still working in the business with me, and we'd try and have a conversation, and I'd get like a sentence in and I couldn't even finish the sentence before I'd even finished it, I'd forgotten what I was going to say. And so then it'd just be this waiting, him waiting for me to reply, and me just sitting there just completely blank. Um, yeah, so I tried a lot of things, fasting. I tried like this idea of slowly building up the amount of work you can do, like going and doing really light exercise and just building that up over time and trying to get through this sort of threshold that I couldn't get through, but I would keep hitting it and get knocked back down. And it became like I became really desperate because, uh, I just thought, is this, I was trying all these things to escape from this situation. I was like, is this never going to end? And I think, they say like, if you've had it for 2 years, your chances of getting out of it are quite low. Like it's something then you'll have for the rest of your life. So what I started doing was Wim Hof breathing and cold exposure. I did like, I don't know, I think it's like Wim Hof does different stuff now, but I did like an original course that he put out that was pretty rough. And so in that course, you started doing the breathing, you started to time your breath holds, like how long you could hold your breath, and I think I ended up getting up to about like 3 minutes and 15 seconds or something like that. But there was another part of it where he said to clench up your body and imagine that you were focusing all of you're holding all your blood in place. It's like damming a wall, like putting a dam up, and you've got all this pressure building behind the dam, and then you could push it to a certain location. And he said he used this technique to one time when he was climbing a mountain and he cramped up and he's just clinging on this mountain like about to fall, and he did this technique to address the cramp. And I think then in other books I've heard people describe using this technique to heal wounds, and doctors being amazed at how quickly the wound had healed because they sort of had this idea of pushing the blood towards a certain part of the body. So I think like what that taught me was that I could really focus on parts of my body, and become really aware of it, just like one part of my body. And then what I started to do was I tried to search for where in my body this chronic fatigue was coming from. And where I could feel it the most, like the first sort of sense when I started to come down with it, was the tension and stuff at the back of my neck. So I started focusing on that. And over time, I sort of, that focus on the back, it became like something that went all down my spinal column. And I focused just on that. And it was almost like focusing on the electronic impulses and the nerves going down from my brainstem down my spine. And my sense of what was going on with me as I went through this process is that I was living in a high stress environment for a very long time. And it's sort of like the needle, the rev needle in your car on the dash. If it gets stuck, so it was sort of stuck in the red. And so it only took like a tiny little stressor to just tip it that little bit more, and then my body shut down. And my understanding of why my body shut down is because it was perceiving a threat that wasn't really that big of a threat, and then firing up the immune system, and then the immune system was attacking myself. And Wim Hof talks about this and about the immune system, and says like a reason why we are, so many people suffer from inflammation and even depression caused by inflammation and things like that, is because we don't get exposed to hardship anymore. Our life is too soft. And so our body has nothing. It's got this, super strong immune system that's out there ready to fight, whatever comes at it. But there's nothing to fight anymore. So then it can turn on ourselves. And that's my sense of what was going on. My threat detection was in the red. And every time a little stressor came in, bam, my immune system kicks in, starts trying to attack something. There's nothing to attack, it attacks me. Um, so I started doing, every time I felt an attack of the chronic fatigue coming in, I would start doing my Wim Hof breathing, and I would start focusing, like I said, on that. Like it's a learned thing, and I learned first to focus on having blood rushing to my hand or whatever it was, but I learned to get really specific about my focus on parts of my body, and then I progressed to focusing on this brainstem where the pain was coming from, and going down the spine, and I would do the breathing, I would do that focusing on that, and I would sort of have some mantras. I forget the mantras exactly, but it was sort of like, there is no threat. My being is fit, strong, and safe. My body is strong and safe. There's no threat here. And I would repeat that over and over, and just sort of quell this panic. And that worked. That worked for me. Nothing else did. And I did this, and it was a pain in the ass, and it took me probably 6 months. And you can enjoy doing Wim Hof or whatever, but having to do it fucking multiple times a day, every time you feel like this stress and tension building up, and know that that's sort of a precursor to your brain shutting down, it sucked. It was a pain in the ass to have to fucking do it all the time. But I did start to see improvement, and I've done it. I did it long enough that I remember, I guess, one day just doing work. I took back the business. I started doing the work myself, and I was pacing myself, and I would have lots of breaks while I was working so I didn't overtax myself and flip things. And then I remember one day just, I had an idea of how much I was capable of with chronic fatigue. And I just pushed through it. I just went, fuck it, I'm just going to do this whole hedge and chop all this stuff and do all this work without taking a break. I just felt okay, and I pushed through that boundary. And another time when I was out kayak fishing, and I sort of got stuck kind of far out away from where I wanted to be, and the wind was blowing my face, and it got pretty choppy. And I was just flying through the water, and I didn't, there was no real choice at that point. Like, I had to do what I was doing. But I didn't crash like I would in the past. And then I was like, okay, I realize now, I've pushed through this. And so I can't even remember when that was, really. I mean, I got divorced and stuff since then, so it's all been a blur. Well, no, I got separated 3.5 years ago, and I probably got better from the chronic fatigue. I was better from it for about 6 months, which is great. It's lovely to get over chronic fatigue and then get divorced nearly immediately. But yeah, so that'd be about 4 years ago. What have I been at? About 2018, and through all the divorce process and all of that, which was hugely stressful. Still running the business by myself. I haven't had any problems with physical exertion or stress overtaxing me. I guess in that time, I become obsessed about cold exposure. I think that gives us that threat for the body to respond to something. And so I haven't missed a cold shower for 3.5 years, and I've done pour ice water, with a bucket full of ice. I leave overnight, and I pour that um, every morning. I've done that for a year and a half. And actually, what I do with that ice too is before I pour it over my head, I put each of my hands in it, and I see that as, because I don't feel it anymore, but to be honest, but when you put your hand in ice cold water, your threat detection, in your body is going to go off. You're going to be like, this is painful, this is uncomfortable. And so what I do, and I've not really thought about this, but I think I started to have some inflammation or something come back, and that's why I started doing this when I was going through the divorce period. But I will put my hand in the bucket and close my eyes and just focus on that. Like I said, if you imagine like an electrical stimulus flowing from the brain stem, your nerves or whatever it is running down your spine, if you put your hand in the bucket, have that threat response and feel that through that body and just say, this is okay. I still do that all the time. So I guess in some ways I still am medicating, or whatever you want to call it, against chronic fatigue. But yeah, that's about it. And now I do the ice baths. I was in the other night for 15 minutes, and not a lot of people that come in can do that, but I think a lot of it probably is because of this work I've done. That to me, I've done this, like, it is a threatening environment to be in the ice water, but I've done so much work to have control of my threat detection that when I get in the ice water now, I feel no fear. I feel not really any discomfort. I said to the guys, I just feel at home. I feel so safe in the cold water. So yeah, that's how I overcame chronic fatigue. It wasn't the most fun in the world to have to do it, that sort of thing, but I've had a lot of things in life that, aren't much fun, but I guess you get a better understanding of your body and things like that by doing it. And definitely preferable to, the hell that I was in before I overcame chronic fatigue. So that's my story, and if anyone's got any questions or anything, I guess let me know and I'll try and help out. Thank you. Bye.